Hey, hi, welcome all. So before we saw that predefined exceptions, how to handle the predefined, how to handle the exceptions, how to convert the system error messages into user friendly error messages. So we have seen that we have used try, catch, and finally throws for try, catch, finally um, throw and throws to catch. Okay, to catch and releasing the resources and to throw an exception which is occurring in the method body, and to handle the exception, to catch the exception which is thrown by the throw keyword from the method body. Okay, we will be writing the throws keyword at the method heading. We have seen a real-time scenario, fund transfer scenario from, we will be transferring the funds from one account to the other account. We have seen it, we have used all these keywords, and we have seen an example on that as well. So now we are discussing about user or custom defined exceptions. Okay, so we'll be discussing user or custom defined exceptions. User defined exceptions, or we can say custom exceptions. So custom exceptions are nothing but just created by you only, or we can say developer defined exceptions also. Okay, so user defined exceptions, see, this user defined exceptions are those which are developed by the we Java programmers. We as Java programmers, we only develop these user defined exceptions as part of our development process. Okay, so let's say for example, so you are having an application, so where you will be like, for example, in the if you take the previous example itself, in your fund transfer example, so here, instead of throwing the generic exception class, we might create a separate class called balance not found exception or negative balance exception. Or here we can negative balance exception, one exception class we can create. For positive balance, we can create one more exception called positive balance exception, something like that. Okay, and for insufficient funds, also we will be create one more exception. We can create one more exception. Okay, so instead of like using the generic exceptions, if we want to create our own exceptions, so we will be creating by using some syntaxes which is given by the Sun microsystem. So Sun microsystem, they are not they are given the syntaxes for each and everything whatever they have created. So they have given the syntaxes for all. So they have created the variables, they have given the syntax. They have created the methods, they have given the syntax. They have created the classes, they have given the syntax. They have created the exceptions, for that also they have given the syntax. If somebody tomorrow you want to develop your own application, now you want to create your own exceptions actually. So for example, if you go to the if you, for example, if you take an example of ATM. Okay, so in ATM you might be you might be entering the balance, negative balance. For that, in order to catch the negative balance, so we'll be creating a negative balance exception. Do not enter negative balance for so and so account, of so and so for the amount. Okay, something like that. So if you want to create your own exceptions, we are going to follow the syntaxes which is given by the Sun microsystem. So let's see what are the guidelines of developing the user defined exceptions. Let's see guidelines. So these are the guidelines which they followed actually while developing the user defined their own exceptions. Not user defined exceptions, their own exceptions. Guidelines for developing user defined exceptions. The first one, guidelines for developing the user defined exceptions. So what are the guidelines? The first rule is choose the appropriate package name. So choose the appropriate package name. The second one is that create a user defined class. Create a user defined class. Or in simply, you can say that create a class. Okay, create a class or user defined class. You can say that because we are the users of the Java program, right? So we used to call it as user defined class. Okay, so every user defined class which we have chosen, every user defined class which we have chosen in step number 2 must extend the runtime exception or exception. So every user defined class which we have created in step 2, this is a step 2, right? We have created a user defined class. In every user defined class which we have created in step 2 must extend runtime exception. Runtime exception. Okay, or you can say that whatever the class we have created, that class must extend runtime exception or exception. So you can extend anyone. So it would be something like this: class extends, class A extends runtime exception, something like this. Okay, fine. And every user defined class will be having a constructor which will be taking the string as a parameter. So fourth point is every user defined class should have a single param constructor which will be taking string as a parameter. If you want to create more constructors, you can create it, but for this, these are the like must and it should be there actually. Okay, so every user defined class must have a single parameter as constructor. Class A. So class name must be similar to the constructor name, right? A. And this will be taking the string as a parameter. So I'll be saying this message, or I can say this exception message. Exception message. Okay. So every user defined class should have a single param constructor. Okay, which will be taking string as a parameter. Okay, fine. So every user defined class, okay, every user defined class should contain the single parameter constructor which will be taking a string as a parameter. And if you want to call the, okay, if you want to call the super class, if you want to call the super class data member, you'll be calling with respect to super of that message. So here I'll be saying this exception message. If this exception message is coming from the super class, so we used to call that one. Okay. So first is you have to create a class, and second one is you have to extend that class with the runtime exception. Okay. Third is you have to create a constructor which will be taking a string as a parameter. And fourth is you have to use a super keyword, okay, to make a call to the exception message, which may defined in the parent class. Okay. Any doubts? Fine. So here is a scenario. So the scenario is write a Java program to withdraw amount from the account number, and if the amount requested by the user is negative, we have to throw a negative balance exception. So if the user requested amount is greater than the existing balance, you should throw insufficient balance exception. So you have to create you have to create two exception classes. One is a negative balance exception. The other one is a insufficient balance exception. And you'll be creating a one business logic where you will be checking the logic. If the amount is less than the zero, so you'll be saying that you'll be returning the negative balance exception. If the amount is if the existing balance is less than the requested balance, you should throw the insufficient balance exception. Okay, so if the amount requested amount is like can able to transfer, like for example, if we have 1,000 and we want to transfer, the amount the requested user is like asking for 500, so at that time we have to process it, okay, without any exceptions, without throwing any exceptions. Okay, so fine then. So let's write the code. Okay, let's copy this one. So how many classes we have to create? We have to create 4 classes. One is the negative balance exception. The second one is the insufficient balance exception. Third one is bank services. And fourth one is the client application, which is our main application. Okay, so let's copy this. Let's copy all. Let me go to my IntelliJ and let's create the class inside my IntelliJ. Inside the services, I'll do one thing. Inside services, I'll just go and create the okay. So not I'll be creating a separate package for the exception classes. I'll create package. I'll say example dot custom dot exceptions, custom exceptions, and inside this I'll be creating a class. So I will say this as of now. I'll give it as a. So but we need to. So let me paste it over here, the requirement. Okay, so the first is what we are going to do. First we will be creating the negative balance exception. Okay, let me copy that. Let me paste it over here. Let me refactor this, rename file, so it will be changed to negative balance exception. So now, as I said, in when while creating the custom exceptions, so the class should extend either exception class or runtime exception. So I'll be extending runtime exception. Okay, so the user defined exception class should have a constructor which will be taking the string as a parameter. So negative balance exception. So I'll be taking the string as a parameter. I'll write it as a exception message. Open the braces, and here you'll be using super keyword and you'll be calling this exception message. So you'll say super of message. Okay, if someone is like extended this negative balance, we'll say this like that. Okay, as of now, like we have created what we have created. We have created a negative balance exception class and we have extended the runtime exception. Now what we did is we created a constructor which will be taking the string as a parameter, and we are making a call to the exception message. Okay, so fine. Cool. So that's done. So let's go and create the insufficient balance exception as well. Let me go and let me create a new class. So I'll be giving the class name as insufficient balance exception. Okay, let me create the class. So here also you'll be extends the runtime exception. Okay, so now what you'll do is, so you'll be creating a single parameterized constructor by taking the string as a parameter. So I'll be taking the, so I'll say again exception message, exception message as a parameter. Cool. So now I'll say super of exception message. Cool, that's fine. So I'll be making as a public so that I can access outside of the class, outside of this class. Okay. Formatted the code. Now what I'll do is I have to create, the main thing is that we have to write a program to withdraw the amount from the account number, so on so account number. If the amount is requested by user is negative, we have to throw negative balance. If it is the requested amount is greater than the existing balance, then you should say insufficient balance exception. And the third one is that the bank services application, the bank services the bank services business logic we have to write. In the bank services, we'll be writing the main logic, business. Sorry, I'm giving the business as a class name. So bank services. Okay. So bank services. So inside the bank services, what I'm doing is I'll be writing a simple method. Fund transfer, fund transfer. So I'll be taking the string from account number. Same what we have seen earlier. The same example. I'll be taking it string to account, and I'll be reading, I'll be requesting the amount. Okay. So, and this also will not return anything. I'll be returning as a void, and it's public, so everyone can access it. And now what I'll do is here I'll be writing a logic. If amount, whatever the amount you are requesting, if it is less than zero, it is less than zero. So what we have to do, we have to throw new, what exception we have to throw? Negative negative balance exception you have to throw. Here you have to write, do not enter negative for do not enter negative value for amount. Okay. So let's say amount, cool. Got it right? If amount is less than zero, something like that, we have to do something like this. So before, what we used to do, we used to directly use a generic exception class. So we used to write a message. So now here we have our own class, negative balance exception class. So which will be executing our message. Okay, if something like, if the balance is negative, will be uh, create will our custom exception will be executed. Okay, if amount is greater than the current balance, let's define the current balance. Let's define double equals to existing balance equals to, let's say I have 10,000 as an existing balance. Okay, so existing balance is less than the amount which you are requesting. So we'll throw what exception? We'll throw new insufficient balance exception. So I'll say please add funds to transfer. First I'll say insufficient funds, insufficient funds, please add funds to withdrawal. So please add funds to transfer. Okay, not withdrawal. Okay, so now fine. So here, after that, what we are doing, if he is like if the requested amount is less than the existing balance, so we'll minus it and we'll give the message something like this. So amount is debited from we'll be giving the account number, from account number, the amount, I'll write the amount, stop in here, the amount, I'll write the amount over here. So it is the amount which is requested amount, right? Yeah, the amount so and so is debited from the account number, and will be crediting that to the other account number. The amount is so and so is credited to account number. So I'll write to account number. Good. So to account number. Then what we are doing? So in what we are doing, we have to like we are like saying that like transaction is successful. So what we have to do now, we have to enclose this entire thing in a try block, right? Try block, right? We have to enclose this entire thing in a try block, and we have to write the respected cache blocks. In the cache block, what we will do is we'll write the exceptions. So there is a chance of getting the negative balance exception. Negative balance exception. I'll say negative balance exception. Okay. So you can write the complete name. I'm just writing the negative balance exception. E dot print stack trace. So sorry, nb dot print stack trace. So it will be printing all the messages, everything at what line number the exception is occurring and so on. So it will be printing it. And one more, there is a chance of getting one more exception, right? That is insufficient balance exception. It's copy and paste it, insufficient balance exception. I'll say insufficient balance. I'll say IB, insufficient balance exception. So now finally block, I'll write simple statement. Transaction is successful. Transaction is successful. Transaction is successful. Something like this. Okay. So now let's go to our main, right? Let me create a main application. So as of now, what we have done, we have created the negative balance exception. Okay. We have created the insufficient balance exception, and we have created our business logic where we are, writing the logic to transfer funds from one account to the other account. Okay. So let's go and create one more class, which is our client application. So let's say I'll be giving the client application name as an escape bank client application. Okay. So fine. So let's say cool. So now what I'll do is I want to perform operations on, the bank application, right? So I'll say bank, I'll be creating an object of bank services, right? I'll be creating an object of bank services. I'll say bank services equals to new bank services object is created. Now I'll make a call to the one of the method of fund transfer. So here I'll be, it is expecting me to pass three parameters. One is the account number, to account, and the amount you want to withdraw. Okay. So account number, to, and the amount you want to withdraw. So amount I want to withdraw is 500. Let's say 500 I want to withdraw it. And the to account, let's say I have ENDB 5700, and I want to transfer from ICICI 448. So from ICICI bank to Andhra bank, I have to transfer. The amount is 500. Okay. So let's see whether we have written correct. Yeah, everything's fine. So let's run this application. Let's see the result. Okay. Current balance is 1,000. Please add funds.
On the
1 minute.
net banking, the previous program, sir, you have to run.
Okay, net banking. Okay, fine. So this one we have to write it. NSK client bank, we have to run it. That's what I got shocked. Why it is showing me that error? Yeah, we have run the program, and the amount is debited. 500 is debited from the ICICI bank, and we have credited to Andhra bank, and at last we are getting the transaction successful message. So that's what it is doing. Okay, so let's try to enter negative balance. Now let's see what will happen. So let's run the NSK client application from our main method. Let's see what would be the response. So we are throwing an exception like negative balance exception, and do not enter negative value for amount 500. Okay. So fine, right? At last transaction is successful. So try block is executed when there is a exception in try block. Only try block and try block, cache block, and finally block will be executing. If exception occurs in a try block, the respected cache block is executed and the finally block is executed. So let's say if I am entering, I have a balance of 10,000, right? I'll be trying to withdraw 1 lakh, more than that. Okay. So let's try. So at this time, what it should throw? It should throw insufficient balance exception. Insufficient balance exception. Okay, fine, right? So we have created our successfully created our own custom exceptions, right? Okay, fine. So we don't need to rely on the predefined exceptions which is given by the Sun microsystem. We can create our own exceptions. If someone today, today or tomorrow, someone will ask you to create your custom exceptions, you can easily create it. It's very simple, right? Huh? Okay, so that's all for now for this exception handling. So we have completed the exception handling. We are moving towards the multi-threading. Okay, so that's all for now. Thank you.